Hello and welcome to Car Retrospective, where today we've got one of the most advanced and fastest cars of the 20th century, even on the dirt, the Porsche 959. Let's have a look. Porsche had been producing their flagship model, the rear-engine 911, for almost 20 years by the time the 1980s rolled around. The 911 had been a great success for a car of its type, and as time went on the question was, what truly could be achieved with the model? This question originated with Porsche's chief engineer at the time, Helmut Bott, who was so interested in finding out the answer he took it up with the managing director of the company, Peter Schutz. Bott wanted to do some research and testing on some new variations of the 911, even proposing testing of all-wheel drive on a 911. Of course, there were reasons for such a concept to exist. Firstly, it would potentially breathe new life into the 911 line way into the future, but more importantly, it might just make the 911 a truly great rally car. Of course, the 911 had already been competing in rally with some success for some years by this point, but this new 911 could take it to the next level. Now, the initial idea for this new 911 concept coincided rather neatly with the new rules for the WRC being introduced, of course those new rules being Group B. Bott, with these reasons at hand, eventually got Schutz on side and the project was given the go-ahead. After a couple of years of testing and development, the first concept was shown off to the public at the 1983 Frankfurt Motor Show, being rather fittingly called the Gruppe B concept. While it obviously shared a good many features with the base 911, the radical new design set it apart from said car quite significantly, and even at this point you could see some of the striking features of the final 959 begin to shine through. The next few years saw further development into the design and the tech for the 959, and some of the stuff involved in this project were outright futuristic, even into the 21st century. The model would be powered by a 2.8 litre sequentially twin turbocharged flat 6, making 444 brake horsepower, also developing 369 foot-pounds of torque. This engine was actually very similar to the units in Porsche's Group C races, the 956 and the 962. Porsche also decided to use sequential turbos as opposed to parallel turbos to allow more smooth power delivery across the entire speed band, as one turbo would act at low speed and at higher speeds the second one would kick in too, instead of them both getting 50% of the exhaust gases. But it wasn't just the engine that was meticulously designed in such a way, the body too was truly something to behold. The body was constructed out of an aluminium and Kevlar composite to keep it light yet sturdy, and the floor was made out of something called Nomex as opposed to the usual steel. It featured huge flared arches on all the wheels, which were connected by quite unconventional sills on either side, not to mention the extensive aerodynamics Porsche implemented all over the car. And then there was the all-wheel drive system. Even since having the idea to implement all-wheel drive way back in the beginnings of this project, Helmut Bott had held onto the idea all the way through, and the team had created the incredible Porsche Steuerkupplung all-wheel drive system, also known as the PSK. This allowed the car to dynamically change the torque distribution between the front and rear wheels depending on things like road conditions and acceleration. For example, under hard acceleration, the 959 could deliver up to 80% of the torque to the rear wheels. The PSK system meant that the 959 wasn't only good as a supercar on the road, but also pretty competent in other conditions too, say a rally stage. By the time the 959 had been unveiled as a proper road car, it was already 1985. The car had been through numerous tests before it was properly entered for the World Rally stage. They first appeared on the dirt not as 959 prototypes, but instead as modified 911 Carreras, otherwise known as the 953s. These Carreras were fitted with the proposed all-wheel drive system that would later appear in the 959. The 953s were first entered into the 1984 Paris-Dakar Rally, where one of them actually managed to take first place. 1985 saw the 959 itself finally be entered into motorsport. Despite not finishing at the 1985 Dakar Rally, it did see a win in the Rally des Ferions in the same year. The 959 would then follow this up with another victory in 1986, again at the Paris-Dakar Rally. All was going well for the Porsche until it wasn't. As it has been said on this channel many great times before, Group B was unfortunately axed in 1986. The Porsche, which wasn't going to be able to be homologated until 1987, simply wasn't going to be able to compete in Group B. It was too late. Therefore, almost overnight, the 959's rallying prospects were severed. Still, it now had the chance to become a road car. As already said, it debuted as a road car at the 1985 Frankfurt Motor Show in the same place exactly 2 years after the reveal of the Group B prototype. The 959 was offered with two trim levels, Sport and Comfort. However, due to production problems, buyers weren't able to get their hands on the car until 1987, a full year behind schedule. When they finally were put up for sale, they cost at the time 431,000 D-marks, or around 225,000 US dollars, which is around 540,000 US dollars in today's money. However, while this price tag was incredibly hefty at the time, Porsche were actually selling the cars at around half of the amount it took to develop and build each model. Therefore, they were losing a lot of capital with each sale. By the time production of the car ended in 1988, 337 models had been built in total, 37 of which were prototypes and development models. The cars were built at the Carrosserie Bauer plant in Stuttgart, a factory which usually produces BMW convertibles, rather than Porsche's own factory in Zuffenhausen, and each model was personally overseen by Porsche inspectors to make sure they were up to standard. While all this work to perfect the car may seem extreme, in the end it gave the 959 a reputation almost unmatched by any supercar even to this day. Back when the car was released in 1987, it was the fastest car in the world. With a top speed of 198 miles per hour, it easily conquered the rough BTR's record of 190 miles per hour set in 1983. Although considering that the BTR was already a modified Porsche, it was more like feuding siblings than an outright rivalry. The 959 also sported a 0 to 60 time of just 3.6 seconds. There was also the 959S, featuring larger turbos increasing the power output to 508 brake horsepower, with a supposed top speed of 211 miles per hour after being tested on the Nardo Ring in 1988. The 959 even had a short stint racing at Le Mans in both 1986 and 87 under the 961 moniker. It finished 7th overall and first in its class in the 1986 race, but the 1987 race wasn't quite as rosy. A misshift by the driver forced the car to spin out and hit a guardrail, and a fire soon consumed the rear end of the car in the Porsche pits. The car was later rebuilt and is now on display at the Porsche Museum. The 959 later went on to become half of one of the greatest rivalries in motoring history, sharing it with the Ferrari F40, which had a similar engine, top speed and 0 to 60 time among many other things. However, personally, as much as I love and adore the F40, that car was relegated solely to the track. The 959, well, that could go just as fast and off the road too should it want to. And on top of all that, well, its involvement with one of, if not the single biggest business tycoon in the world, Bill Gates. The man bought a 959 back in 1987, but at the time the car wasn't actually legal in the US. He put the Porsche into storage for 13 long, agonizing years at the port of San Francisco before he could drive it stateside, when the law of show and display made it legal in 1999. Now that is some serious willpower, because I know that if I was in that position, I wouldn't have been able to help drive it. And there it is, the Porsche 959, a car that still amazes me to this day. With such an excruciating and precise development process, it was always going to be a marvel. Sure, while it didn't get to compete in Group B like it was initially born to do, it ended up seeing a rich and expansive career, from a dabble into sports car racing to, I don't know, being the fastest road car in the world. at least until another proto Porsche came along and snatched up the title for itself. Thank you so much for watching that video, with a very special thanks to Ben Wright and Conrad's son, who are very generously donating at the highest tier on my Patreon. Just £1 a month is an amazing help, and I also have a Discord server and an Instagram page which have their links in the description. Again, thank you for watching and take care.